Hey guys, and welcome to Film Artsy, your number one source for all things films and movies. My name is Elijah, and one of the biggest movies that are coming up in the future for the Marvel Cinematic Universe is The Eternals. And with The Eternals finally coming out after so much speculation over a long period of time, we're starting to finally see how this series is going to really fit into the Marvel Cinematic Universe and what Marvel is really aiming to do with these groups of characters. And honestly, The Eternals isn't really one of the most popular Marvel comics, so it's going to be really interesting to see how they incorporate them into the MCU and what type of take they take with these characters. But remember, at the same time, we've seen Marvel do this before with Guardians of the Galaxy, who were relatively unknown or in the Marvel comics before they kind of booted them into the MCU, and they ended up being great. So we're really excited to see what comes up with the Eternals. So we thought it'd be really interesting to go over this cast of characters and look at each character individually, what abilities they have, and how they might contribute to not only the future of the Eternals on film, but also the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So let's jump in and look at the team here.
Agent Romanoff, you miss me?
Oh yeah, Charles, we got ourselves an X-Men fan.
Captain.
Your Highness.
Captain, big fan, Spider-Man. Hey everyone.
So essentially, the Eternals is kind of a group of superhumans, and they have superhuman strength and abilities and powers, and that's probably going to be some sort of similarity between all of these characters that we're going to talk about, but each character kind of has their own unique role and abilities on their own. First, we can look to the character Thena, who is one of the members of the Eternals and is casted to appear in the 2020 movie by Angelina Jolie. So she's going to be actually playing this character in the MCU, which should be really interesting just because it's a pretty major actress coming in to take on this character role. This character, besides just the superhuman strength, durability, regeneration type things we see in a lot of MCU movies, also has the ability of flight, mind control, telekinesis, and a lot of other powers that are just kind of really abstract that you don't normally think about. We really don't have any details as to how this character is going to relate with others, but it's interesting to kind of start off with somewhere and a pretty massive actor taking on the role of this character to get us kick-started with the Eternals. Next, we have Ikaris, who kind of serves as another main face of the Eternals. He's a very generic character, kind of, from what you see in a lot of the Eternal comics, but his character is actually pretty fleshed out and relatively interesting. What will be cool about this is that this character doesn't necessarily have as many psychic powers as other characters, but has more energy control, so this might be interesting to see what happens in battle with this character kind of front running a lot of the fights. But also, we have to remember the Eternals is kind of different since they're this superhuman race. We're going to see a lot of these characters existing for a very long period of time, and it's likely that this new film will take place over a period of 10-20,000 years, or at least have some sort of very long length associated with the film. So it'll be cool to see how they kind of play this all together. The actor that plays this character is actually Richard Madden, who is the person who played Robb Stark in Game of Thrones. So it's a pretty reputable actor coming in and jumping in with this character. Next, we have the character Kingo, who's going to be played by Kumail Nanjiani. That's already going to be an awesome character to see, just because this actor, he's in a lot of things, but he's really funny and great on screen, and we're excited to see what they do with this character, because this character isn't really a major character in any publication, but he is interesting. He's a swordsman, and he's kind of like this big knight and has all these powers. And while there's not a lot known about him, as he hasn't been in the forefront in a lot of the comics, especially in a long time, it'll be cool to see how this character is brought into play in the live action take of this series. Then we have Lauren Ridloff, who is going to be playing the character of Makkari, who this character is kind of interesting because it's gone through a couple of iterations in the past, playing as the superhero Hurricane, and I think they even called this character Mercury before landing on the character named Makkari. Now, Lauren Ridloff is actually going to be playing a version of this character that while the character is really a male character in the comics, will be played as a female variation of this character. We've already seen this before happen in the MCU with Captain Marvel, which originally was a male character and later iterations made it a female character. So it'll be interesting to see how they do it. Personally, I think it's actually a good idea because it kind of diversifies the cast a little bit, since a lot of these characters were kind of the generic male character, and it's cool to see different types of people in these roles. So it'll be cool to see what ends up happening here. But what's really interesting is that this is going to be the first deaf superhero character. Now, Lauren Ridloff is, I believe, legally deaf also. She was in The Walking Dead, but she also has a lot of other performances that she's done in the past. So it'll be really cool to see what they do with this character. But by already kind of incorporating these things of having a deaf character and just really getting a good actor who can take on this role, it'll be cool to see. And this character's powers really focus on like speed and running really fast and having super speed and whatnot. So this character could be a major benefit to not only the Eternals, but the Avengers maybe one day when we see a team up. We're also going to see Salma Hayek jump into the cast of the Eternals, playing the character Ajak, which is kind of interesting because Ajak, who's kind of a darker, mysterious character, but is typically the leader of the Eternals, is also another male-centric character who they're going to be using a female actress for. And it'll be interesting to see how they translate this and how we see a team of characters led by a female leader and how these things kind of play out on the big screen. It's something different from what we've seen before, and we're all for seeing new types of stories told along the way. Next, we have Leah McHugh, who's going to be playing the character Sprite, who potentially could become a fan favorite in the cast of the Eternals. Sprite is a character that essentially, while being thousands of years old, actually has the appearance of a child, and this character is kind of always a child-looking character, or physically a child, and it'll be interesting to see how this comes into play. This character has pretty generic abilities compared to a lot of the earlier characters, just having the general cosmic power and abilities and some psychic abilities along the way. So it'll be cool to see what they end up doing with this character and how they make this character diversify itself against the other cast members. Next, we have Don Lee, who's going to be playing Gilgamesh, and Gilgamesh is actually a really popular character amongst the characters that we're seeing from the Eternals, probably one of the more popular characters, and this character is pretty much one of the powerhouses of the group, having a ton of abilities similar to what the other superhumans have that are in the Eternals, but also has some unique things like being completely immune to disease. This character has more of a buff historical presence as far as Marvel is concerned, so it'll be really cool to see what happens with this character. Now, Don Lee is a Korean American actor. He's been in a ton of South Korean films, so it'll be cool to see a more international actor take on a role that's mainstream media worldwide. So we're excited to see what ends up happening with this character and how this cast member will interact with the rest of the Eternals. Next, we can look to the character Druig, who is really interesting because this character, while does have some bases in a lot of the Marvel comics, typically this character has some sort of association with either Russia, Russian culture, maybe KGB and type of things that we've seen in some of the stories along the way. And it would be really interesting if with the upcoming Black Widow movie, which is going to take a look at Natasha Romanoff's backstory, maybe they can do some sort of introduction to a character that has some sort of tie between these two stories, and maybe these stories will connect in some way or another. Either way, this character has a lot of the similar abilities, but also stands out on his own as just kind of having this extra motive and this extra storytelling element with him. And since he's being portrayed by Barry Keoghan, who is known for playing in Dunkirk, it'll be really cool to see what they end up doing with his character in the future and what he's like in the Eternals. Then we can look to the character Sersi, who's one of the more popular characters in the Eternals. She has the ability to levitate, she has different love interests that tie into the Eternals and whatnot, and this character is going to be probably a massive and very important character in the Eternals movie, just because she may have more centric plot lines than other characters that are also going to be in the Eternals. Interestingly enough, this is actually one of the few instances where an actress is returning to the MCU after being a completely different character in the MCU and casted before, as the actress Gemma Chan was already in Captain Marvel that just released earlier this year. It's kind of interesting that they're going to reuse the same actress for a different character, but the actress's performance was pretty good and the characters look different enough where I think that they can pull it off and it won't be jarring in any way. And actually, it's kind of a cool little Easter egg if you think about it. And finally, one of the biggest cast announcements we recently heard was that Kit Harington was coming to the Marvel Cinematic Universe to star in the Eternals, and he will be playing as Dane Whitman, also known as the Black Knight. And this character is another massive character in the Eternals. He's also a character who's completely existed outside of the Eternals and has done his own things from time to time, so it'll be cool to see how this character will probably become centric and exist in his own right besides also existing alongside his team. He's an expert horseman, he's a physicist, and there's a ton of other cool things going for this character, so we're really excited to see how this character ends up playing out in the future of the MCU and with the Eternals. But anyways guys, that is it for today as far as the Eternals are concerned. Which character do you think is the most interesting? Who's unique to you? Which character do you just like the way they look in general? Let us know in the comments down below. Be sure to subscribe with notifications on for more videos just like this, and we'll see you all next time with a brand new video. Bye guys.
I'm about to.
Hi, everybody.
Hey everybody, how you doing?
Hi.
See you guys.
Know anybody?